Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Believer Hawks episode. Atlanta Hawks lose to the New York Knicks 119-110 in a very convoluted game of bad officiating, missed opportunities, turnovers, sloppy play, everything under the sun in this game on Martin Luther King Day for the Hawks, but ended up not coming out on top in this game. So we're going to talk about that, everything that came from the game, the different type of subjects I want to get to from the game, and all that. So appreciate you guys tuning to the Believe Hawks podcast. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this episode or enjoy the Believe Hawks podcast, or also like the video, leave a comment on any discussions that we have during this podcast as well. The same thing to my audio listeners, available on any podcast platform available out there, Apple, Spotify, whatever you like to listen to your podcast on. That's where you can find Believe in Hawks. So, as I mentioned, a lot of crap happened this game, right? But at the end of the day, Hawks had their opportunities. Hawks had their chances to win this game. This was one of those high turnover games that killed the Hawks. This was a game where they had cold spells that hurt them. Certain guys are not playing well right now. So we're going to get into all that. But I do want to start, just to get it out the way, with the officiating. Officiating was bad. Officiating was bad this game. And it wasn't bad from a perspective of some team got more free throws than the other team or something like that. That's not what I mean. This is one of those games that you hear NBA players complain about and just talk about the inconsistency. This officiating crew was so inconsistent tonight that there'll be one possession you can play physical and be very aggressive, and they'll call nothing. And then there's plays where you touch an arm and they'll call it. I could tell it frustrated both sides. The Knicks got teed up twice. The Hawks got teed up twice because of officiating. Both sides were frustrated with it. It was just not a good game officiating. This is probably one of the most worst referee games of the year the Hawks have had, if not the worst. And because it was just so inconsistent. And so that, I think, really, I feel like it somewhat ruined the momentum of the game at times, because it just felt like it was muddied up by certain calls and all these different things. Players frustrated because they're like, these are typical play calls that you're missing. The Knicks and the Hawks both used 2 challenges in this game and were successful. So they overturned 4 calls. So that's 4 calls right there that the refs could have officially missed if they didn't challenge him. So this was definitely a game where, if you're the NBA, the referees are getting Fs because they did not do a good job officiating this game today. It impacted both teams. I mean, some of the Knicks counterparts that I follow also were talking about it on social, just about that. It feels like the refs are making it about them. It's not about the game. It's not about the players. It's about them. And then you've heard that sometimes be said by certain teams, certain players, that the refs kind of are calling the game like it's about them. And so I think that really isn't ideal for the league to be having this type of officiated game. Because I really think that just some of the calls in this game just were not good calls. Not good calls at all. So, but you live and you learn. You get through it. I mean, obviously, as a player, you try to adjust. But if it's inconsistent, it's hard to adjust to something. It's one thing if you know they're calling something consistently, then you can adjust. If they're not, kind of hard to do your job when you don't even know what you can or can't do. But now going into the actual game. The Hawks tonight had 23 turnovers in the game. I believe they had about almost 10 in the first quarter. Turnovers have been a very big part of why this team has lost certain games to good and to bad teams, because they just have these games where they are just extremely sloppy with the ball. And obviously, one of the main people of that is Trae Young. Trae Young had 9. It's not good. Don't want Trae Young having 9 turnovers tonight. Obviously, he wasn't the only one who had turnovers tonight, but because Bogi had 3, Clint had 2, Hunter had 2, Daniels had 3. You had multiple guys who turned the ball over, but Trae was the main person. And that's obviously something that they obviously want to try to clean up because, the turnovers in this game to me made it feel like when the Hawks were leading, or if the Hawks were trying to get back into the game and retake the lead, the turnovers just seemed to kill the momentum. You're giving the Knicks more possessions, and it kind of kept you from being able to get over the hump. And so obviously this was one of those games where I've said when the Hawks lose, they turn the ball over. When the Hawks play cleaner games, they have a much higher chance of winning. And, so that to me is something that obviously will be a big thing to come out of this, right? But really in this game, the Knicks, listen, credit to the Knicks. They did a good job of attacking matchups. Brunson finally had a good game. He was able to finally have that game they needed. And that was because, again, Dyson got into foul trouble early because of some tic-tac fouls, their officiating and calling. That allowed Brunson to kind of get more into a rhythm. Because obviously Brunson has to work against Dyson. But, Brunson really gave him a lift. Mikal Bridges gave him a lift in the second half. They started going after because the Hawks have put Trae Young and Mikal Bridges. I remember when they made this change too, because I remember they originally, if you remember the first game of the time they played each other, they had Trae Young on Josh Hart, and Josh Hart is more of a downhill guy, and so Trae will struggle against a guy going downhill against him. Mikal Bridges is kind of always looking for the jumper, and he's not a physical type basketball player, so you would prefer Trae to guard him. You're just more about just use effort. Obviously, like I say, send him to your help, things of that nature. But he got going in the second half. He sparked the run of the third quarter that helped the Knicks get the lead. And so, he was big in the second half. They attacked that matchup, and they were able to, like I said, Brunson getting going, and then Mikal winning that matchup and getting going really, I think, gave the Knicks the needed boost they needed to get over the hump and beat the Hawks in this game. And then on the Hawks side of things, right now you have an issue where right now, just in as much as he's done for the team, right now, Bogi is playing like he's unplayable. We've talked about the slumps, the issues, that he's had from the field. Tonight, Bogi only had 1 point. Took 4 shots, all threes, and didn't make one. That broke his 3-point shooting, 1 3-point shot made per game streak he had going. And it's just one of those things where, like, because Bogi's not a great defender, if he's not scoring, he really hurts the Hawks. That's been documented. When he scores, he can really help this team. Because, again, like I said, there's no perfect player in the league. If you have an offensive-minded player, you're hoping he scores to make up for the defense. There's a lot of type guys like that in the league. But, there's definitely been some games this year where you're just like, if Bogi played better. If he just played, not even like him needing to go above and beyond, like just him playing up to his averages, the Hawks would have been fine. And right now he's not even doing that. He's playing below his averages. And so that's really hurting them offensively. And then obviously, like I said, defensively. And, even Garrison Matthews has been off the last few games. He hasn't made a 3 in a few games. So he's coming down here giving you 2 points. So now you're 2 guys off the bench are giving you a combined 3 points. So you're not getting offense from those guys. And those are guys you expect to get that from, because if they're making shots, that just gives a huge boost to a Hawks offense that needs it. And so, right now, as they've done, because Bogi's had stretches of bad offensive play before, it's just where you're at that point where you're just hoping he works through it and you hope that he can get a shot going. It's tough to watch because you every game counts and you want to win. And it just feels like those games where if you lose, you're like, man, if Bogi just could give us something, that may have changed the direction of the game if he could just give us something. And so, because the thing is that Bogi was a guy who, again, there's so much trust in him from the coaching staff because of what he has been for this team and what everyone knows he's capable of. So there's a lot of trust in Bogdanović. But when he's not making shots, the thing for the Hawks, though, is they don't really have someone else to turn to. It's one thing if Garrison Matthews was playing really, really well, and then Bogi was struggling. Because then you could say, okay, well, they're a similar type of player, so we can just go with Garrison. Garrison's not playing good either. So if you're the Hawks, you don't really have another option to go to in this situation. You kind of have to just wait for Bogi to get himself out of the slump, and hope that he can get some shots going. And, obviously Bogi could do some things. Obviously he could attack the rim more. He is capable of getting to the basket. So that's something he definitely could do and maybe see the shot go through the rim. That is something I think could help, but obviously he's known for the three-point shooting because he provides that spacing that the Hawks need. And tonight, the Hawks had a great shooting night tonight. So this wasn't even a bad shooting night for the Hawks. Hawks shot 13 of 30, 43% from the field. So they shot well tonight. They beat the Knicks at the three-point line. They just, multitude of other things, turnovers, officiating, and Bogi not playing well. Because and things like that. So I think that's been tough for this team. That's why it's very important for Zachary to get back, not because for Bogi's sake, but more because right now you have Garrison and Bogi struggling. So if you get Zach back, you at least are getting a defender back, hustle play guy, and then we'll see what Risha gives you that night offensively. Because right now you're having to play two bad defenders off the bench who aren't scoring. So now you're playing two negative, I like to say a negative player for your roster or for the rotation that game. He was a negative tonight. And so we'll see if Zach gets back next game against Detroit. They're going to be home for the next three. But you're really hoping Bogi can kind of get out of this slump because they need him. Like right now, the way this season is turning out and the Hawks are going to be competitive, you're probably not going to trade Bogi unless you get a really good deal. So if you're going to make a run, if you're the Hawks in this playoffs, because you're definitely going to be in the running to be a 6th seed probably. You need Bogi to play better. If Bogi can just resemble somewhat of what he was last year, that can be such a huge boost for them. And they'll need him even more now with the decision that Quinn made going with Onyeka Okongwu in the starting lineup. Because now you're not getting that off the bench. Clint's going to the bench. So that can be a 2-point night for Clint Capella. Last thing you need is 3 guys out of your 4 bench players that you play in your 9-man rotation giving you single digits, 2 points, 1 point, 3 points. Now Clint was okay offensively, not great at all, but he gave you something tonight. Clint scored something tonight. He gave you 12 tonight. But that's not something you can consistently rely on from him. So you need Bogi to give you something offensively to help. Because when the Hawks won that 6-game winning streak, their bench was playing really well, and Bogi was playing well. Because you had a Okongwu playing well, Hunter playing well, Bogi playing well. So now you're getting all that offense, and the Hawks obviously are a tough team to beat in that position. So something that's going to obviously be big for them moving forward. But, obviously we'll have to see if Bogi can get out of that slump. But as I mentioned, Okongwu entered the starting lineup in this game. He's played really well the last 3 games. Clearly, this is a sign that the Hawks are feeling really good about Okongwu right now, the way he's playing. And really tonight, if I'm being completely honest with you, he outplayed Karl-Anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns played 9 more minutes than him. He scored 13 points, 9 rebounds. Okongwu had 14 points, 9 rebounds. But, Cat is literally a 7-footer, and I think Okongwu out-rebounded him multiple times tonight. And that's something obviously people were concerned about when thinking about starting a Kongwu was, oh, he's too small. But he's kind of been showing in this game. The Hawks just play a much better brand of basketball when he's on the floor. Like at the end of the day, that is something that has been consistent when a Kongwu plays. The Hawks just have a much better offensive flow when he's on the floor, and even defensively adds another guy who can switch. Like I said, Clint is the better rim protector, but Onyeka is the better defender. And so you're adding a defender. That's why at the beginning of the game, you kind of saw that. The ability to switch basically 2 through 5 when he plays. So there's not an easy matchup for them to attack defensively outside of Trey. And then they can kind of work defensively around that, depending on the matchup. And I'm happy for Onyeka. I am excited for him to take on this new role as a starter. This is something Hawks fans have been waiting for. The ones that don't want Onyeka to start, we'll see if you're right. The ones who've been waiting for Onyeka to start, we'll see if you're right. I'm excited for him. Tonight, he played well. I can't complain about how Onyeka played. I mean, Quinn had a very questionable stretch in the second quarter, first to second, where he played Clint like 10 straight minutes, and I don't know why. That was weird to me. I thought a Kongwu, like the way they played a Kongwu in the second half was more of what I thought they would play. Because I've said with Clint, if you play Clint 5-6 minutes in a row, like you're playing him in bursts, like JaVale McGee, like y'all know how JaVale McGee, people said the book on JaVale McGee is you cannot play this man in long stretches of time. But you tell him to play bursts, he can be very effective for you. And I think that's what Clint has to be right now for them is a burst guy, like 4 or 5 minutes here, 4 or 5 minutes there. And that's, where you get his effectiveness, his rebounding, his rim protection, things like that. 10 straight minutes was a very interesting decision for me, especially when you lost Dyson. I was just like, I'm not feeling this right now. So for me, I'm curious to see how Onyeka continues to grow in this role. Like I said, I'm assuming he will be the starter moving forward. And I've also mentioned how this will potentially mean that Clint is more likely to be traded because he's on the bench. Because I've said this, I think the Hawks are preparing, if they do make that move, to go with Larry Nance and Onyeka Okongwu as the centers. And yes, defensively, in terms of a defender, Okongwu can defend. The biggest thing you're losing is rim protection and rebounding. That's what you're losing, right? But you're hoping Onyeka can continue to play as well, rebounding. Jalen averages 10 rebounds a game. So from your starting front court, you could still get about 18, 20 rebounds just between those two guys, and there's no 7-footers. But really, it's like Larry Nance isn't really known for that. But the thing Larry Nance does bring is offense and shooting. He will allow this, like offensively, you will see I think a much better Atlanta offense if that is what they do. Because clearly you have now Larry Nance who can come in, stretch the floor, he'd beat you from 3. I think he can be really good in the pick and roll at times with Trey. And so you're going to get that if you make a decision like that. And I think in the Eastern Conference, if you think about the top teams, you have some bigs like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. But Jared Allen doesn't scare you offensively. The only big in the top 3, and I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, but like most teams only have like one big that scares you. Like Karl Anthony Towns is the only big that scares you on the Knicks. And tonight he didn't even have a great game. Hawks were able to control Karl Anthony Towns in this game. And that's because Karl Anthony Towns also has very questionable shot selection. But, he didn't play bad against them. Boston, really, it's Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, obviously Al Horford can help with matchups because he can draw you out. But Jalen can handle that if he's playing that spot. It's really Porzingis. But again, you can also attack Porzingis. Cleveland's really the one because Jared Allen's a really good defensive center and it can go for 20 if you let him get offensive rebounds and putbacks and dunks. But, I mean, you can kind of go with that center group against that. And Jalen and Hunter help in that way, right? And then your third center would become Dominic Wilder. Because I don't know if you can flip Clint for another center. That's the problem. They would probably have to flip someone else with Clint maybe to get a center. Because that's what I'm saying. If they make that move, I don't know what they want in return for Clint Capella. So I've said that they may be fully okay with potentially going with the Nance Clint lineup, not Lance Nit, a Kongu Clint center rotation, and which means offensively you're going to be better because now your bench unit is going to be Nance, Bogi, Hunter, Krejci, and realistically, Krejci's scoring the basket more. He's hitting some threes. I mean, Nance hits some threes. Bogi hits some threes. Hunter hits threes. Now everybody on your bench is hitting threes, and now what was a big issue at the beginning of the year, which was your shooting, now is becoming not as big of a weakness for you. So, but again, we don't know. The trade deadline isn't here yet. We'll probably heat it up as the weeks go on, and we'll start to hear more rumors. But like I said, the Hawks may not trade Clint Capella. So, I mean, we'll have to see. But to me, that this is really pushing towards that with Okongwu being the starting center in this game. And it seems like moving forward. So all of those things are going to be interesting to keep an eye on moving forward in this game. You know, because like I said, this game against the Knicks was really one of those, like, you had opportunities to win. There were some other extensional factors. But, I mean, listen, the Hawks have had a tough month. January was always going to be a tough month for the Hawks. You're playing a crap ton of road games. The Hawks have only played like one home game in like 3 weeks, 2 weeks. The Hawks have played, let me see, the Hawks have played one home game this month, which was against the Suns. Every other game was on the road. I mean, so you have been traveling a lot during the month of January. And sometimes you wonder, like, okay, are you – because, I mean, like I said, I've said multiple times, players say the hardest part of the NBA grind is travel. Because if you ever have been a person who travels a lot, there's just some days you're just a little bit more tired. And especially them because they're playing a sport. And I'm not saying that's what I lost to Knicks tonight at all. That's not it. But, I mean, you know, you don't ever know how that weighs on you. And now you luckily have 3 straight home games coming up. So you get to be in Atlanta for after this game the whole week before you have to go to Minnesota next Monday. You play Pistons, Raptors. Pistons obviously are a better team than people expected. So they're a team that's fighting the Hawks to potentially move up the standings. You win that game, you hope that you beat the Raptors twice in a row. That's a home back-to-back against them. Could be on a 3-game winning streak again before you go into that Minnesota game. And then you get your makeup game that should have been your second home game of the month, but was canceled due to icy conditions against the Rockets before you go to Cleveland, which will, I think, be in primetime. So, I mean, like I said, we knew January is going to be a tough month, and the Hawks have gone 4-5 during the month with 8 games on the road. Like the biggest thing you want to do is just stay afloat, and they've stayed afloat. So, you know, like I said, the Hawks have done what they can with what they've been able to do. Like I said, today's game was a little frustrating, as I've mentioned. You know, and one other thing I noticed in the game against the Knicks, Dyson Daniels is like literally the like every team. There's certain players that will be big. Dyson Daniels is huge against the Knicks because of what he could do with Brunson. And I said that as soon as we lost him with those 2 fouls, I just feel like it changed things. The Knicks were able to get back into the game and really eat into the Hawks, and then they started applying a lot of pressure because Dyson, first, like I've mentioned, when Dyson is at the top of the key, he's more aggressive. He goes downhill. He can attack Brunson because Brunson's a smaller player and he can get to the rim. Dyson just showed good finishing around the rim. And then obviously he can defend, right? Clearly, when he was in foul trouble, they had to ask Hunter to do that. Luckily, Hunter gave you offense, 22 points tonight. Really good for him. But, I mean, Dyson is probably the X factor in the series against the Knicks. Really, because of everything he does. Especially now that he is kind of the de facto backup point guard. So if you lose him, now you're having to go back to Krejci, which I think that's not the best utilization of him. And then, you know, you're trying to make it till Trey gets back into the game. So we'll have to see. how things continue to go coming out of this. Like I said, not really mad about the loss. There's a lot of different things that I just kind of unpacked here for the Hawks moving forward. Like I said, you got to get ready for Detroit. Come back, get ready, compete, and then try to get a win. So, not really too worried. I don't know if the Magic playing tonight. They're not. So I believe the Hawks will stay in the 6th spot today. So if the Pistons win, then they'll take that spot probably, unless the Magic play tomorrow. But yeah, so right now, if you're the Hawks, man, you're just out here, you're competing, you're just trying to make it. Knicks are battling the Celtics for that 2nd spot. But I mean, as of right now, there is a pathway, the way this East is going, that the Hawks and Knicks can meet in a 1st-round series. So that would be interesting for sure. And we got to play these guys 2 more times. Like we played that extra game against them in the Cup. So, and we still have to play the Knicks 2 more times after this. Next time we play them is Wednesday in February, back in Madison Square Garden. So we're going to play them 3 times there. And then we play them again in April. So we'll see this team again. A lot happened this game. Hawks lose, like I said, 119-110. You come out of this game, you obviously got to cut down turnovers, have to cut down turnovers. You hope Bogi can snap out of his shooting slump sooner rather than later. You'll see if Ricochet gets back next game. Jalen Johnson's still working off the rust, 11 and 12 tonight. Still sees not fully back. Jalen has to get himself into a rhythm. And, you just kind of go from there. But like I said, you got a good performance from Okongwu. Starting center looks like moving forward. DeAndre Hunter, big X factor as well against the Knicks because they don't really have a lot of guys who can defend him with what they have. And then Trae Young, 27 and 6 tonight, but the 9 turnovers. Got to cut that down. So definitely a very winnable game for the Hawks, but, that's how things go. This is how the league can be. This is how games go. And you just learn from it and try not to make the same mistakes again in the next coming game. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But if you enjoyed this Bleeding Hawks episode, definitely subscribe and like the video. Leave a comment down below. Audio listeners, same thing for you guys as well. Leave a rating, leave a review. Let people know about Believe in Hawks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at Bricey_2K, BRICEY_2K to keep up my Hawks takes as news breaks, the game, when I'm able to watch them and things like that. And obviously, where you can find me, Believe in Hawks, after a lot of these games. Wish we could have got the win on Martin Luther King Day. I know a lot of people were mad about us not getting a game in Atlanta in primetime because of the college football playoff championship tonight, but it is what it is. So, appreciate you guys. It's your boy, Rice Lewis. See you next time. They said,